The Game Awards is widely considered one of the most prestigious events across the industry, and over the past 10 years, it's drawn hundreds of millions of viewers from across the globe for one simple reason: the recognition and award for the best games released every year. With categories ranging from the top titles across genres to the best games on specific platforms, there are a lot of products from a lot of developers who've gotten exposure through these nominations. Oftentimes, exclusion from these rewards is just as big of a statement. Rest in peace, American developers. And it just so turns out that Wuthering Waves by Kuro Games has had its name put forward for the best mobile game of 2024. If one thing's for certain, they've earned this nomination and potential victory. That victory won't come easy either. Wuthering Waves and Kuro Games have some stiff competition, with one title in particular backed by one of the largest communities and budgets in gacha gaming. However, those that have experienced our journey with Kuro Games across the past 6 months understand that Wuthering Waves, despite its flaws across technical issues and story pacing in early months, checks off nearly all the boxes when it comes to Game of the Year. And today we'll be taking the time to document and examine what those boxes are. It's shocking that Kuro Games wasn't nominated for Best Community Support, because the gacha community hasn't seen a developer this synced up with the player base in a long time. As always, if you're enjoying this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. One of the greatest parts of Wuthering Waves is something that isn't stated enough. That strength is how incredibly easy it is to enjoy the game without spending a single dime. Many viewed Wuthering Waves' technical issues at launch as one of the worst things that could have happened to the game, and while those issues could have led to a decline in active players, they also led to one of the greatest free-to-play experiences in gacha gaming. With the ability to immediately pull 2 standard 5-star characters, one random and one selected, and a follow-up beginner banner to select a third, every player, as long as they viewed some type of guide, was able to craft a strong roster that could fill every role needed on a team and steadily work towards endgame content, all without spending a single pull on any of the game's limited banners. Combine that with the fact that Kuro also made 5-star weapons incredibly accessible through free rewards and a targeted banner, it was incredibly easy for any player to enjoy this game and their progression across the game's world without feeling like they were held back by bad luck or RNG, which is what many consider the biggest problem in gacha games. You didn't have to reroll, and having such a strong free-to-play foundation made pulling on limited banners a decision on what you liked versus what you needed. And when players pull for who they want, they simply enjoy the game more. This ease in enjoyment was something that was also apparent across every other avenue in the game. Exploration streamlined with near instantaneous access to helpful gadgets, built-in mechanics like wall running, and a simplified overworld experience that meant 100%ing the map and actually completing the game felt like a game. This was a breath of fresh air compared to many other titles, specifically Hoyoverse games, where exploration and map completion became more of a chore than an enjoyable leisure activity. Frustration in Wuthering Waves didn't come from gameplay. It came from the lack of gameplay after you finished everything, built from a desire for more content. This focus on player enjoyment extends into what many of WoW's biggest critics consider the weakest part of the game: its 1.0 story. A player's enjoyment of the story is, at the end of the day, subjective, but the fact of the matter is that Wuthering Waves simply allows you to skip it if you don't like it. You have the conscious decision to avoid engaging with content that you don't want to see and focus on the aspects of gameplay that you prefer instead. Kuro didn't want to force enjoyment of their game. They recognized the faults in their early storytelling and instead made the story updates in every version after 1.0 so compelling that players viewed it willingly with their complete consent. After coming from titles like Honkai Star Rail with its incredibly lengthy and overly wordy monologues and Panacani, or Genshin Impact with its absurdly bloated, dull, and unengaging world quests, and ZZZ with its absolutely mind-boggling implementation of TVs at launch, this kind of consensual storytelling was refreshing. In WoWa, you can make the conscious decision not to care about the needlessly complex backstory of the package courier who lost their dog. In other titles, you are forced to. Kuro gives players a choice, and they've made the choice to skip harder than ever in recent updates by making their in-game dialogues and cutscenes cutscenes some of the most well-animated in the industry, with complex facial expressions and real, meaningful gestures to drive their storytelling. They give you the skip button, but a lot of reasons never to use it. And that's what happens when a developer is confident that they're delivering a good experience, instead of other devs who force you to engage in that experience and gaslight you into thinking it was good through the sunk cost of your time, one of the most valuable resources you can spend. Wuthering Waves had many amazing systems in place since day one, but the biggest reason why it's such a strong contender for Game of the Year is how diligent these devs have been when it comes to new features and updates to the game. These developers actually play their game. These developers actually listen to player feedback. These developers actually want to make this game as enjoyable as possible. When problems are made known across the player base, all it takes is as little as 1 or 2 patch cycles for changes to be made. Friction and exploration from having to switch to pistol characters for shooting challenges? Eliminated in a patch. Players tired from overworld farming for materials like echoes or ascension ingredients? Dealt with across multiple patches. Players missing the elusive realm? It's gone for one patch, while returning the next with the feature update so massive that the version's main event is completely centered around it. There's quite literally too many quality of life focused changes to fully list out, and it's clear that all of these updates serve one purpose: make Wuthering Waves a better game. When you look at how other developers in this space respond to feedback, it's like night and day. Zenless Zone Zero had 3 beta tests and 3 amazing opportunities to integrate feedback from players and make their game better. TVs and their horrifying implementation were present and heavily critiqued across all 3 of these beta tests, with many citing the awful experiences they led to in gameplay. The game released with these TVs. These devs did not listen across 3 beta tests, and even if they're starting to listen now, it doesn't have nearly the same level of impact and confidence as the listening done by Kuro Games. When it's been 4 months since the release of ZZZ and you still can't walk around the overworld with 1.0 characters, you have to ask yourself, what are these devs prioritizing? How did Kuro Games add more characters to the elusive realm, complete with their own unique upgrade trees and insane modifications to gameplay, than Hoyoverse, with their monumentally larger budget, can add walking animations to their 1.0 roster? When you see the effort one company is putting into improving their game for their players and compare it to the bare minimum getting pushed forward by others, it becomes clear who should be the top pick for Mobile Game of the Year. There's one game in particular that emphasizes gameplay and enjoyment far more than others, and we've only taken a look at how that enjoyment is built into the game's systems outside of combat. Kuro emphasized the game part of Gacha Game when they developed Wuthering Waves, and they've carried forward that mentality in every way possible with every update they've made to the game. If that isn't worthy of Game of the Year, these judges need some time for self-reflection. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Peace out.